This is the award-winning Lee Pitts Live.
Brought to you by the North Law Firm. For car accidents and negligent security cases, call Joe at 239-337-1191. And by Lee Health.
Southwest Florida, welcome to the award-winning Lee Pitts Live, and nothing is more award-winning than being here at Lee Health. We're specifically in Dallas-Sinos Children's Hospital of Southwest Florida, one of the great hospitals in all of America, and they're hosting Lee Pitts Live for the next 2 weeks, and next 4 weeks actually. We're so thrilled about that. We're going to get a chance to learn a lot about the history of Lee Health, formerly Lee Memorial Health System, and specifically as it relates to the African-American community. Just a sterling history indeed. Our first guest for the show will be Jim Nathan, the former president and CEO of Lee Health. We'll also get a chance to talk to Diane Spears, the nursing director at Lee Memorial Hospital. She's in the general medical and infectious disease area. And my good friend Yemisi Olarantola Coates, who's a system director, diversity and patient care, civil rights system director. People, that's big time at the hospital. All that's happening on Lee Pitts Live. We'll be right back. Southwest Florida, welcome back. Where are we? We're at Dallas-Sinos Hospital of Southwest Florida, a part of the Lee Health System. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our marvelous guest here. And I know you guys say Lee has a great job. He gets to meet all these people, and that is true. I am lucky in that way. We have Diane Spears here, who's a nurse, a director in nursing. Jim Nathan, the former CEO and president of Lee Health. And of course, Yemisi Olarantola Coates, who's a systems director, which is huge. I won't say that again, in hospital world. All right. It's so good to get you all here. Let's bump you in.
All right.
Thank you.
I know this is your first time on Lee Pitts Live, so let me open up by asking you a tough question. Just kidding, people. They are old hats. They've been on Lee Pitts Live many times. Let's start off with you, Jim. First of all, we said that you're a former CEO. You're retired now. People let's catch up on Jim Nathan. Tell us, what's going on with Jim Nathan these days?
Well, I'm already off the streets. I'm teaching at Florida Gulf Coast University and having a wonderful time. I got a great class, and been doing a little traveling with my wife. I've got a grandchild in frozen Milwaukee, and I don't like going there in the winter, but had a chance to see him too.
I'm not going to just zip through the Florida Gulf Coast. I'm going to ask you a question on that, because you and I exchanged some emails on it. I just think it's just a unique perspective to have a person like yourself in a university setting who has had so much real world experience. How are you able to work that curriculum? Did you create your own curriculum, or are you going with this non-real world curriculum?
I designed the curriculum. Okay. The content I was able to do easily and quickly, but converting it into teaching modules and keeping the energy level for the students up so that they're engaged. That's been a challenge for me, but I'm having a great time.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. And Yemisi Olarantola Coates, what is your, I always call it, I do your whole name, Yemisi.
That's okay.
Because I practiced this so long, I want people to think I know stuff. Yemisi, tell us what your responsibilities is at Lee Health.
My responsibilities are centered around what I call the 4 C's. It's caring people, which is our employees, doing training and development related to them in the workplace, and as well as caring for the diverse patient population, community engagement, patient care, which is a huge piece, which I'll get a chance to talk about, and then corporate social responsibility. There's a lot of philanthropic work that I get to be a part of that I'm really excited about. So being at Lee for the past 10 years, I've been able to composite all my roles into the 4C model.
Excellent. And you, Diane, I know you're a nursing director in a different department, but go ahead and elaborate a little bit on what your main primary focus is.
As you said before, I'm a director of a medical infectious disease unit, and my job is to coordinate the care and do the operation of that unit, maintaining quality, safety for the patient, of course, finance, and patient experience, assuring that they have an awesome experience, as well as maintaining staff satisfaction. So
excellent. Now, when you first came into the Children's Hospital, a few people came up to you, that you didn't know, but they knew you, and they basically said you were a legend in the hospital industry. They actually work here, and I'm like, this is Diane Spears. Oh, I know Diane, she's a lady. So how many years have you been with Lee Health?
Over 45, going towards 50.
So Diane, you kind of started at entry level and worked your way all the way up to a director now.
I started right at the very lowest level in healthcare.
Okay.
Worked my way up with the assistant of the hospital. I was able to, I remember one of the directors saying to me, you have done all you can do without license. If you want to grow and expand, you need to go back to school.
Really?
And that was something that I quickly considered. And with the help of Lee Memorial, I did that.
Now, when we say license in your field, that would be RN license?
RN license.
So you had already done a lot of work without an RN?
Yes,
That's
yes. I worked as
interesting.
a non-professional, the CNA, what we called the patient care technician at that time. I done EKGs, worked as a ward clerk, which is a unit secretary today. Yeah, but I needed a license if I was going to continue in the role of healthcare and expand.
I hope everybody out there is listening to that. That is a great, not rag to riches, but a great story.
Right, to
Yes,
this.
it is.
Before we get all technical, we got a whole show here to carry on. I want to get you guys' thoughts, and particularly with you being people of color, working in Lee Health over these years as we focus here in Black History Month. The impact of a CEO when you guys started working here, who was Jim Nathan, in terms of diversity, opportunity for people of color here in America, particularly at the hospital. Your thoughts, Yemisi?
Well, you know, I am not, I've been here the shortest, so I'm the baby in the group. I've been here 10 years, and when I started at Lee, there was a previous person in my role, and once she left, I met with Jim. I didn't know him yet. It was around 2010 when we sat down and I said, okay, what do I do? What is this about? How do I go about my role? Because I was studying. And at the time, he had done so many things, had so much influence. Of course, I knew Diane Spears even before I started working at Lee. I used to go to Mount Hermon. I was going to Mount Hermon and knew Diane before I started at Lee Health. And so I've heard great things about Lee Health and Jim's role. And so when I got here, he said, Yemisi, I want you to focus on the community. That was a primary thing. And I want you to do what you feel is right. So, which is the perfect thing for me, because he gave me the wings to be able to move and do based on what I see, what I hear, what I understand, what I research. And so as a person of color, you know, coming from another area, you know, I'm not from Lee County. So I have a different perspective being Nigerian, being from via New York. I have a different perspective. And I think connecting with Ms. Diane Spears and other people of color, I was able to get a pretty good handle and assessment of what was needed in the community and be able to be charged with what I needed to do. But really, the community engagement was where I started. And then that literally blossomed me into all the different facets within Lee.
And having the support of higher management like Jim Nathan?
That's correct.
Was
It was
tremendous.
it was tremendous. And I want to emphasize, you know, I did some statistics in the past 10 years. You know, when I first came in 2007, you know, when we had leadership update meetings, you know, it wasn't as many people of color. Of course, there were things being worked on, but it wasn't as many. But now, 10 years later, there has been overall diversity, a 193% increase from 2007 to 2017. And in the African American, 133% increase in diversity in staff. And in management, 116% increase amongst African American in management. So there's been huge gains, not just with staff, but also in education, also in patient care, also in the community. There's been, you know, everyone's been chipping away. When Diane came, she was chipping away. Jim chipping away, and they were passing the baton to me.
Diane, when did you first meet Jim, and what was how was that? I'll get to you in a minute, Jim. We got to pay homage, Jim. I'm just thrilled that I got the opportunity to do this on television.
Because I've been there so long.
Because I got my personal Jim story too. Go ahead.
I had been there so long. I was there with Mr. Gadd when he was there. And so Jim came in when Jim came. So I was there new, really trying to find my own self around, find my way around, and very shy. And like Yemisi said, there wasn't that many African American that I could look up to. Flora, Blackshear,
She'll be on the show next week.
okay, Minnie Jackson.
The first African American nurse in
Yes.
Lee Memorial
Yes.
Hospital.
Yes, Flora and Minnie Jackson. And there was
Next
one
week, yes.
other African American nurse, I can't think of her name right now. They were the only one I had to look up to. And
It was a big help for you.
big help for me. It gave me the drive to push forward, to make a difference.
Also, you could see them and see there's opportunity there, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes.
Now let's get to Jim. Now, Jim, first of all, I have a Jim Nathan story, okay? And then we'll finally let you talk, Jim, since we're at your hospital, okay? Jim, this is all about Black History Month. Now, first time I saw you, Jim, you don't know this, I saw you running that bridge, North Fort Myers to North Fort Myers. Can't remember what the event was. There you were running. I said, man, that guy's running. It was like maybe 20-something years ago. But I used to see you around. I knew you were important to Southwest Florida, but I didn't really know what you did. And then eventually I found out what you did. And, you remember I came up to your office, we had a great meeting. But long before then, when Lee Pitts Live first got started, everybody in TV land, it was very difficult for a TV show hosted by a Black person, first one in Southwest Florida, to get an advertiser. And had a great conversation with Jim and some other people who are gone now in the marketing area back in like 1992, 93. And Lee Memorial Health System was one of the first sponsors of Lee Pitts Live. So, having said that, if it were not for Lee Memorial Health System, now Lee Health, Lee Pitts Live, as you guys know it now, 28 years, would never have existed. And I credit a lot of that to at the top, Jim Nathan.
Wow.
Okay, now, Jim.
I credit it to your first name.
And it was so easy, and that said something about that. In 1975, when you arrived, what was your thoughts about the cultural environment at Lee Memorial Health System at the time?
When I arrived, it was only 9 years after the Black hospital in the community had been closed down by the federal government. I was only expecting to be here. My wife and I thought we'd just be here for a year. Thought, yeah, why not live in Florida for a year? And we thought we'd be back in Cincinnati. And we had really good friends in Cincinnati, African American. He worked for Ford Motor Company in management, and his wife was a teacher with my wife. And when we told them where we were going, we said, well, you'll come visit us. And they just stared at us. And we were so naive when we arrived. And I just have always believed treat everybody with respect and dignity, and good things will happen.
And all of that just kind of
But when we came,
benefited a lot of people.
We were quite shocked. We saw, and in Cincinnati, where we had been through riots and so much going on, and we saw this as somewhat of a quietly segregated community. And we were even told by people who we should invite to social events and not invite, et cetera. And that was just really hurtful. But I just figured once we stayed on and we were here, just treat people with respect and dignity, and good things will happen. But one of the biggest things that happened, I know next week you have Flora Blackshear and Minnie Jackson coming on your show, but Diane Spears and Minnie Jackson and a director of radiology, now deceased, but Jose Cesar, came and visited with me one day. And they said, you know, we're really proud of this organization. This is many, many years ago. We're really proud of this organization, but when we go home, we don't feel that our neighbors and our friends know what this is all about. And they were basically asking me to change the world. And I said, I can't do this by myself. And it's not a light switch. Maybe over time, if we all work together, we can make a difference. And I think that really spurred me to realize that it was more than inside the walls of the organization, but it was outside the walls that we had to make a difference.
Yes.
And I was involved in Lee County Pulling Together efforts that really focused on diversity and getting people to listen and talk with each other. And we did it internally and externally. And while we didn't solve all of the problems of the world, and we still have horrendous challenges in diversity in our community and in our nation, little things, little by little, every day, we can all make a difference.
Yeah.
And so I think what they really did was help open my eyes that it's not just what you do inside the walls, it's what you also do outside the halls.
Yes.
Excellent.
Let me piggyback on
Yeah.
what Jim's. I'm sorry.
Stay right there with that point. I'm gonna let you pick it back. I also want to mention Christy Rickett and Yemisi when I talked about the relationship that Lee Pitts Live has with Lee Health. Major contributors to that as well.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
To piggyback on what Jim is saying, is he said, when we went home and in our community, it was so negative about Lee.
Really?
In fact, yeah, I would even take my name tag off because I didn't want people to know. I wanted to know but not know that I worked for Lee. It was so important to me that my community saw Lee Memorial out of my eyes. And that was a caring, loving place.
Excellent.
And that was my initiative to
Yes.
get moving.
And I want to add to what she's saying, because that was what she felt at that time. But when I came in, some of that still resonated, and that's why the community piece, I get it now. As you tell the story, it is very important because, you know, and I'm sure you would have mentioned the University of Michigan study that stated that Lee County was the most segregated county. And during that time, it was
In the country.
in the country. And during that time, I know it was Christy Riga, John Cecil, and Jim Nathan, they started the diversity department. And it started around language and recruitment. But now it's become something different. But because of that, in the beginning, when he said, I want you to go out there and create those relationships, build upon, I got some of those same comments that, you know, oh, Lee doesn't care. Yes, Lee does care. And let me tell you why. Let me show you why. And those same people that might have felt that way changed because what they saw, the presence and I mean, you can see we're all over the place in terms of our involvement on multiple levels.
That's right. And I'm out there, I'm in the public, I know what's going on. I will say that I have not, that has not been an issue with Lee Health in the community. I mean, if anybody can say that, I can say that. Now, back to you, Jim. One of the things that you said in passing in your first conversation is you said a black hospital had closed down. I want to hear more about that. There was a black hospital known as a black hospital before Lee Memorial Health System was there?
So there was a hospital that started in the 1940s. It was called Jones Walker.
Okay.
And it was started by blacks, for blacks, because they had no place to go.
Located in Dunbar?
Dunbar.
Yeah.
Yes.
Really?
Blount Street, right near where the MLK walk starts every year.
Okay. And do you recall what the level of health care was there? Was there any stories coming out of there?
Well, Diane overlapped a little bit, or you came just about you came in what year?
Jones Walker.
In 1970, that it was closed
So it
at
was
that
closed
time.
in '66. So when you have, I'll tell you, when you have Flora Blackshear on next week, I'm sure she can help you
Okay.
with some of that history. But there's a few people who are still actually working at Lee Memorial that were involved still from that transition, that went through that whole experience of what it was like. There was, to my knowledge, there was only prior to 1966 when the black hospital was closed, there had only been one black ever admitted to Lee Memorial. And there was almost a riot over that. He had been badly burned down in Bonita. And when he arrived in the emergency room, there was discussion about the fact that he wouldn't make it if he wasn't treated. But people started coming and pulling their loved ones out of the hospital when they heard that he had been admitted. Because there were others that would come over from Jones Walker, maybe have a procedure, or doctors would have to go there, but they were never allowed to be admitted. And it didn't happen again, other than that one incident in the mid-50s. It never happened again until the hospital was closed. And that really came as a result of the federal government moving and saying that, you know, you're not going to be reimbursed if you continue to practice segregation.
We're going to go to a break right there. We're going to come back and we're going to pick up, we're going to come back to you, Jim, on how you got things to change. It wasn't that easy, I'm sure. We'll be right back.
This is the award-winning Lee Pitts Live.
Brought to you by the North Law Firm for car accidents and negligent security cases. Call Joe at 239-337-9999. 1191. And by Lee Health.
Welcome back to Southwest Florida. I know everybody at home right now, you got your DVRs going. This is fascinating history here of this fabulous hospital concern. We'll go right back to Jim Nathan. Jim, as the head guy, because other corporate CEOs and presidents who are watching this show can learn from what you learned and continue to make Southwest Florida a better place. How did you go about changing the culture? Right now, Lee Health is a oasis of diversity, different countries, different nationalities, different age groups, sexes, and so on, and races. How did you start that process?
So, you know, as I said earlier, it's never been a light switch that you just, you know, flip a switch and everything's going to be the way you want it to be. And we're so far from where we need to be. As an organization, as a community, as a society, as a nation, we have so many challenges. And to assume that we've achieved something significant, we've got a long way to go. But it was really the belief that I've always had that the only role that I have is to be an enabler so that brilliant, talented, skilled individuals can do their thing, so that we have the resources and the culture to be able to be successful. And when people don't respect and trust each other, you cannot do the job that you need to do. And so it goes way beyond the color of skin. It goes way beyond training. It goes to the heart of respect for each other, the dignity that we have of how we live our lives. And the more that people can have that with each other, the more successful they can be to do their jobs. So, but all these things they're not short-term decisions, and we can all have wishful thinking, but I learned a long time ago that wishful thinking is only wishful. That you have to create it. And I think what Yemisi's comment earlier about being encouraged out into the community, she knew that she had many people from within the organization saying, look, you know, we've got plenty of issues here. We've got all kinds of things that you need to do. And there I am telling her she needs to get out in the community. So she was dealing with conflicting messages. And it wasn't that the other messages were inappropriate. She had a job to do. We had language services issues that we had to do on a day-to-day basis and other tasks that she had. But at the same time, if we were going to really make a difference, it had to be outside of the walls.
Yes.
Now, Yemisi, from listening to this conversation, it says a lot to me about how the work environment can influence how we as a society get along outside of the society, because we spend more time at work together interacting with different people. Even from my banking days, I would only be around white people at work, and then when I went home, I was around black people. So I put on my Anita Baker music when I was driving home, because I was like, man, I got to get some black in my life here. People at home would get a kick out of that. But now, how do you go about continuing to push that message within the hospital system?
What's great about it is that I'm not the only one pushing that message. And it's not just me. It was Jim, it was Diane, it's so many people down the list. We could have a whole segment of the names I can mention.
And you actually celebrate various cultures. Talk about that within the Lee
Yes,
Health.
we had, one year we had LMHS, when we were LMHS, Multicultural Family in Fashion. And what was really cool about it was we had physicians participate. So you had from physicians to techs to nurses to interpreters to business operators, all in one place. It was literally no place to sit. You had people sitting on the floor. We had a physician do henna tattooing. We had food from all over the country, and we were able to bring our spouses and our children to participate as well. It was a great event. So that was one year. And then the following, we had like a contest. If Lee Health has about over 100 different ethnic cultural groups represented, over 100. And so the directors took on a culture, and they were able to do a presentation, table presentation. Jim was there looking and kind of judging who was the best. But what
People
was
really
great,
enjoyed it,
well,
learned a
the
lot.
thing they learned. They learned more about their coworkers. So for example, one nursing director, she had Philippines. She learned a lot about the Philippines, and it was a good exchange. You know, I think the way I look at diversity is a little different maybe. You know, to me, diversity has multiple identities. multiple. And that could be, yeah, you're black, but you're also from New York. You're also maybe Muslim. Maybe you are a veteran. There's so many layers.
From the Caribbeans or whatever.
Exactly.
And same thing with Hispanics. Let's
exactly.
go, but I don't want to make sure I get this in before we leave this show.
Yeah.
Is not only locally are we talking about this, but Lee Health has been recognized for its diversity.
Yes.
Received an award, I think it was Forbes magazine.
Forbes magazine.
Go ahead and elaborate on that if you please.
Well, I just learned about it, so I'm still getting more details, but we were ranked out of 250 organizations, corporations, a number
Not just
58,
hospitals,
not
just
just
in
hospitals. Starbucks was in that list,
is
Google
huge.
was on the list,
Wow.
ranked number 58 in the country.
Wow. And they know about us down here?
Yeah, they, according to their process, they interviewed employees. They, that was one of their, they surveyed employees. They looked at our website. I'm sure surveying our employees was a big one. Talking to them and hearing from them. They looked at our website, our policies, our practices, all of that. And I did not apply. None of us applied.
Really?
They looked and found us.
People, you can Google that. I read it. It was an excellent
Yeah.
article. So congratulations on that. I know you kind of don't want to take credit,
No.
but you're the diversity. Jim, when something like that happens, though, how does that make you feel?
So I shared that with a number of friends around the country when that came out, and I said, you know, out of all the recognitions that I've personally had, this one for this organization is right at the top. It means an awful lot to me.
And Diane, you recall when you first started working here, basically black people who were working in the hospital were basically in a cafeteria or something like that?
Yes.
Go ahead and expound.
Cafeteria, housekeeping, things like that. It was a struggle. I would hear people say, you know, the only place I can get a job at Lee Memorial is in housekeeping or in the dietary and food services. Unfortunately, I had to experience that with my daughter-in-law, who's currently working at Lee Memorial as a manager of the business office. I had her to apply in the ER, and I couldn't believe it. She called me crying, and I said, why are you crying? She said, my application, they said it's lost again. I said, what do you mean it's lost again? And now I'm dealing with it with my family, and I go, let me call HR and find out what's going on. And I did. I said, I'm being a mother hen.
Yeah, but you're smooth. You got a nice diplomatic way about you.
She does.
And I need to know what's going on with my daughter-in-law. She's applied for this job, and her application is lost again. And they said, well, we found the application, but she has to retest. And I said, you know, this is the third time she's tested. This will be the third time. So I'm going to say, if you found the application, you need to put it through. And they did. And she's worked with the business office probably over 20 years, and she's a manager now in that office. So that was an eye-opening for me, because I did say to HR at that time, I said, you know, I've heard my community say this, but I didn't want to believe it. We have an issue that we need to look at, what's happening when our people come to this hospital.
Yeah, and I want to piggyback about her daughter-in-law. When I moved here, I couldn't find a job. I was either overqualified or no, meaning too much education, little experience. And it was frustrating, very frustrating. And I went to her daughter-in-law, Gracie Spears, and I said, I put a little packet in a folder with my resume and my cover letter and all my experiences. I know, Lee, you're laughing at me.
You speak probably about 16 languages, too.
I mentioned that in there. And I said, Gracie, if you know or hear of any job within Lee, please, I need a job. I need to work. And she said, she looked at my resume and she said, you know, Yemisi, she couldn't find anything for me in her area that she felt that I would do well or like. So she knew that at the time the previous manager was looking for a supervisor, and passed my folder on to her. And we met, we didn't go through the whole HR process. Sorry, but we met prior, afterwards. And matter of fact, I have to say this, at the time, I didn't have as much experience, according to her, and she said to me, she's like, you know, you're very smart, you know, got great skills, but I don't know, I'm looking for someone with skills. And so I went back home and I emailed the manager at that time and I said, I may not have years of management experience, but here is 4 reasons why you need to hire me. Because I've done this, this, this. And I got the job.
And now you're like in one of the top positions, and I mean, the title of the word civil rights.
Yeah.
Just briefly.
Wow, well, that's a big one.
Why is that? I never seen anybody in a corporation with that on their title, civil rights.
Well, that deals with patient care. If a patient feels who are under the protected class under Title VI, which is African people of color, national origin, deals with language or ethnicity, also sexual orientation, veteran age, all of those categories. If they feel that upon coming to one of our facilities, they have not been treated in an appropriate way, that complaint comes through a process where I get engaged and involved, investigate, and come up with, all of us come up with a solution and to investigate if that's the case and to manage it and deal with it.
Now, Jim, one of the things I noticed about you as a president and CEO formerly, people are going to still see you as that. That's never going to leave. Big shout out to Dr. Antonucci as well, doing a good job. But people connect to you as like a regular guy over the years. I've just noticed when you were moving around the community. How did that, is that something that you learned or just the way you were brought up that people just gravitate towards you?
I just have always felt that everybody is just a person. And when I hired, I had an assistant with me for 32 years, Linda Hammer, and when she retired, she tried to outlast me, but she didn't. And when I hired Heidi, there were 2 things that I said. I said, you will never do anything that will make this office appear to be more of a position of power. People are already nervous enough when they try to track down the CEO's office. And you will always drop whatever you're doing if there's a people issue that's out there and deal with it as number one, even if I've given you an assignment of something to do. And I just feel that each of us are a part of the components and make things happen. And it's not about power, it's not about control. It's about how we work with each other so that people can do what they're trained to be able to do. And it just.
How should we feel as a community, knowing now that you're retired from the position, that this type of information, this type of progress that we've already heard from these wonderful ladies here and your backstory on when you first arrived, how can we as a community be assured that this is going to continue into the future?
Well, I think you've already mentioned about Dr. Antonucci. I mean, he's a great person, who's a caring, loving person, and I knew him for many, many years, long before he ever started to work specifically for Lee, as an OB-GYN in the community, and his compassion for his patients, and his business acumen, but more about who he is as a person. And I'm very optimistic that culture that we worked hard to try to have will not only continue, but will continue to flourish. Again, this is a journey for us in our society, and it's a society that has a lot of horrendous history that we can't just wipe away, but we have to learn and grow from it.
Excellent. Final question, Yemisi. I know we could go forever. We'll do another show like this in the future. We got part 2 next week, people. Why is diversity and inclusion so important to Lee Health?
It's important on 2 components. When you have a diverse staff, you have innovation. Okay? There's an NPR study. It was a professor who stated that when everyone looks the same, you trust each other too much. But when it's mixed, you challenge. And that's where real innovation thrives and grows. And so that's from one part in terms of workplace. The other key component is our community. Our patients are diverse. Their needs are diverse, not just culturally, socioeconomically, educationally. And there's a lot of different factors. And studies indicate and show that those factors impact the way they understand, receive their health, and so on. And so when we merge the 2 worlds and recognize that equality is not equity, equality is treating everybody the same, not taking into account the diverse needs presented by the individual. When you apply equity You're saying, I want to understand who you are and what you need and apply the care according to that terms. And that's what we strive to do at Lee.
And I'm so fortunate in this particular case because I get all this education and working. And one of the things that came out one time, I was interviewing Jim and you, Yemisi, when you guys were talking about, and I hadn't even thought about it, and my audience probably haven't even thought about it either, that people come to the hospital who have different languages that they speak, different cultures, particularly different languages, and you may want to know something from them, and you can't even speak their language. Right. And you guys were telling me that you have that handled.
Right.
But the average, I just never thought about it. You know, just I speak English and that's that.
But not even that. You have people who speak English who can't read or understand what is the information that is provided. So which is health literacy, you have to be. There's a lot of layers that we at Lee look at.
And that would be my dad. My dad is functioning illiterate. I found out when I was in college that he couldn't read, but he functioned in life. But if you put a document in front of it, he couldn't read it, you know?
Yes.
So there we go. I'm just getting all this in
Yes.
while I get my little cultural diversity in right here. Hey, this has been fabulous. And next week we're going to have on the show, who's going to be on the show next week, Jim?
Flora Blackshear, an icon. And Minnie Jackson, two longtime Lee Memorial leaders, and along with Diane, who really have been the pioneers to have made a difference in this community and in this organization.
Diane, you survived, right?
I survived. That was my goal, was that my community see Lee Memorial, as I do, that we are a caring organization. And I believe that under Dr. Antonucci, that we will continue to care. He says all the time, it is our to deliver the right care in the right place at the right time.
That's right, Dr. Antonucci. Yep.
And I know I said that
the
was
baton has been passed.
I know I said that was my final question.
Yes.
But the good part is my name is on this cup, and I can ask another question if I want to. I own the show. Diane, I have seen you over the years, and Lee Pitts Live has been involved in helping promote it, the Omega Health Forum, focusing on healthcare in the African American community. You've been a spearhead on that. How rewarding has that been? Tell us a little about that.
Absolutely rewarding. You have to know I started this when I worked with oncology patients, and I saw the stats that African American men was dying at a higher rate from prostate cancer than a white American. And I didn't understand that. The incidence was high, couldn't stop them from getting it, but why are we dying? And I began to understand because of not getting early detection and early intervention. And my goal was that we're going to make a change. We have to make a dent in this. Along with Dr. Bredden, Willie Jackson, the Omega, and Lee Memorial, Jim Nathan, approving, never questioning what is she doing out there, but giving the resources so it can be done. I am very proud of that program because our guys can talk about prostate. They get in there and get the exam, and they're living.
And it's absolutely free, and it's right in the community. You usually take over a school and retrofit it like a hospital.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a big day. It's a fun day.
And you can see in people's eyes their lives are being transformed that day.
Yemisi, I know I'm supposed to be the last question. Some people might be fearful of going into a hospital for health care, but they will go to that health forum, like the Omega Psi-Phi Health Forum. I know Omega's want me to call the whole name. Good friends of mine, Dr. Carter Spearhead. They will go into that school and get that exam, right?
Yes, they would. And not only get the exam, they get the education. And that's the key component so that they will not be fearful anymore. And then, of course, you know, Ms. Diane has had the diabetes awareness program as well in the community. I mean, there's a lot of things she has done to really bring education to our community.
She's made me even more conscious of my health. Whenever I'm around her, I'm trying to suck my gut in.
Yes.
But I'm getting that blood pressure down too.
No, absolutely. But I would like to, like she said, you know, Jim passed the baton to all of us. It's been passed on to Dr. Antonucci. There's so much more to continue and to do. But, you know, the main thing is you have to have a good foundation in order to build a house.
Okay.
Foundation has been built, it's strong, and the house is getting its walls and its windows, and soon a roof. But continuous improvement, we're always improving our homes. So like he said, you know, it's not that everything is magically changed. The point is we continue to build. That's the point.
And we mentioned Dr. Antonucci several times.
Yes.
Folks, that's the new CEO and president of Lee Memorial Health, a good man. Everybody here, thanks for coming out.
Thank
Big
you
shout
so
out
much.
to
Thank you.
Kelly over in the Public Relations Department for making this a reality here on Lee Pitts Live. Next week, we'll have part 2. We get a chance to talk to some historic African-American nurses who started their careers here at Lee Memorial Hospital. We'll see you next week.
Lee Pitts Live is a Lee Pitts Enterprise production.